And welcome to Rose Play, Season 12, Episode 47. As always, I'm your host, Aurian MoonRose, and today we do the first of the 3 special episodes, Rose Play Top 5, which will be doing the top 5 rare replay games. Now, yes, again, like Sleeping Dogs, we haven't quite gotten to the game on the show, but I have played ahead a little bit, just to prep myself ahead of time. So, Rare Replay came out. It's 30 games by the company Rare. In case you don't know them, they're the ones that do, like, Perfect Dark series, Conquer, Banjo-Kazooie, Cameo, Battletoads. If I did mention that one already, I might have mentioned that one. But, basically, they're a company that has been around for, God, a long time. We'll get more into that into the review, and there'll be a mighty review of that one. But, in this top 5, I will be taking a look at the 30 games, and I will be choosing 5 of them as the top 5 best games that they have. Now, if you want to know what the top 5 worst are, eventually I'll be doing a top 5 worst ones too. This will just prep y'all for when we do get to Rare Replay. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and start the top 5 at number 5. So, right off the bat, I had trouble picking a number 5. That's how bad it is. The first 4, not a problem. This 5th one, a problem. So this either goes to show you that I either didn't like a lot of the Rare Replay games, or just none of them really stood out from the others. Doesn't necessarily mean I hate them, except for, the top 5 worst, of my opinion. Now, before I do state these top 5, remember that these are my opinion. So, what I like, you may not. And what you like, I may not. Anyway, with that in mind, my first pick was the original Perfect Dark. Now, with each of these, I'm going to try to give at least 3 reasons and explain it just a little bit. So, the first thing was increases with difficulty. Now, what it sounds like right off the bat, I'm meaning, oh, you have multiple difficulties that you can do. No. This also slightly goes into Perfect Dark Zero, which, albeit not as great, still pulls off the same thing. So, you start off with one mode, they give you like maybe 2 or 3 objectives. You go to the next difficulty, now you have possibly an extra objective. By the time you get to the hardest difficulty, you can have up to 5 to 7 objectives. Now that's just wow. So when you think you've figured out the game, oh, I know where to go. I need to go over here to do that, over this. Haha, I'm going to beat this difficulty, no problem. Bam, they throw on like 4 additional objectives. And these objectives are devastating sometimes. Especially considering that within these difficulties, it gets to the point where, hey, we're not going to give you as many checkpoints. Of course, enemies are going to destroy you more. So, there was stuff within there that made it better. Excuse me, I'm still a little sick. So, next up was the weapons. Now, sometimes they would give you some interesting weapons. Especially later on in the game, you would get some that were kind of experimental, futuristic. Kind of happens with the fact that the game does take place a little bit into the future. But what really stood out more than anything was the ability to have the weapons have a second function. And some of these second functions were amazing. Like the laptop, which hooks up to something. Sometimes they were just as simple as being able to triple shot or sonar. I mean, the fact that each weapon had 2 functions, you're like, oh, so it's a machine gun. Oh, but wait, this machine gun allows me to make an image of myself? Awesome! So I thought that was a pretty interesting aspect that Perfect Dark threw there in too. Now, the last one kind of more involves the story, and I might go into spoilers, but I probably won't. No. Top 5. I'll wait for the actual game. Maybe. So the last one is halfway through the game. This is just a futuristic spy op, and you're just, doing the missions and, okay, where stuff is happening. but halfway through the story, there is a twist. So semi-unexpected that you're like, whoa. And then the game really takes a turn in difficulty and weapons, and I mean, it really, the halfway twist really expands on the weapons, the objectives, and even really makes me question the sequel slash prequel. Well, prequel slash sequel did take place before this, but I just found it very interesting that they took this route when it just seemed like it was going to be sci-fi futuristic, and then bam! Right door on me. Didn't expect it coming. Alright, so that takes care of Perfect Dark. Let's go ahead and move on to the next one. Number 4. Next up on the list, Battletoads. Now, I know what a lot of you are thinking right off the bat. Aurian, why did you choose Battletoads? Like, this is one of the most frustrating games that there is. And actually, that's one of my points. But here are the reasons why. It's really, really fun with 2 players. Now, a single-player version, I mean, you can get mad really fast. With 2 players, as the Angry Video Game Nerd once put it, at least you're not suffering alone. If you get mad at your partner, you can beat the crap out of them, though it does hurt you and eventually screws you over. But this is definitely a game that is much more fun with a second person than by yourself. And that's why this made number 4. The second reason is it's satisfying when you do succeed. Now, it can take you thousands of tries. I think the one that most people complain about is the motorbike one, trying to do certain jumps. But if you end up passing that and getting good at it, it is so satisfying. And it feels so nice to know that I beat that. I took the time, the patience, the anger, and I beat that. Now, albeit a lot of the game is not fair, in my opinion, either when it comes to the continues and the levels, but this is an NES game we're talking about here, and there were a lot of NES games that were not fair. At least this one was fair with extreme prejudice. And finally, that it can be very frustrating. Now, I decided at number 4 that it was a game that I liked, but I didn't like it. I didn't know where to put it, so I thought, even though it is number 4, I would also do one negative on that. It can be very frustrating. How many times do you have to jump bikes to get to a certain area before you get good at it? My personal favorite, there's this one scene where this vortex is coming at you, and you've got to ride your bike, and you have just about got to be perfect at getting away from this thing and surviving. Otherwise, it will eat your soul, man! Your soul! And that's kind of the problem. I mean, there's some areas of the game that almost seem ridiculously impossible, and they're gonna make you very frustrated. I think another one is when you're chasing the guy down the bomb. If any of you played this game, gotten to this point, you know what I mean. But all in all, at the end of it, even with the fact that it is extremely hard, it is extremely satisfying. And Battletoads at this date, even though being one of the most hardest and most hated games, is at the same time have a cult following, and is a game that people really very much enjoy. Ooh, here we come. Only 3 left, and now each game, in my opinion, is at its best. So let's continue on with number 3. So, my top 3. The first one, which is, of course, 3, is Jetpack Refueled. Now, I had a hard decision between all the Jetpack games. And don't get me wrong, I really, really love the original Jetpack. It was the first game I decided to play on the Rare Replay game. It wasn't the first Rare game I ever played, but on Rare Replay, it was indeed the first one that I decided to play first. So, when I got to Jetpack Refueled, which came out on the Xbox 360, was basically a remaster, upgraded, hey, look at me type game, I was a little skeptical at first. It looked fun. I thought, oh, well, this is going to be short. This isn't fun. I don't remember how many levels there are. I want to say there's 160, 97, somewhere within the hundreds, close to the 200. That is amazing. But, so the first thing I'd like to touch on here is this is a beautiful remastering and reimagining. So, basically, it pretty much is just the first Jetpack game that came out in, like, 1980-something. Yeah, 1980-something, updated to, I don't want to say updated graphics of, like, current gen, but like an animated style. But regardless, I mean, they do everything right. Everything's there. The upgrades are interesting. The enemies, oh boy, the enemies. So that's the second point with this, is that not only is it a nice remastering and a reimagining, you know, going up as high levels as they are, but there was way more levels than the original. I think there was like 20 or 30 levels, and then it just repeated itself, which, okay, that's fine. This one has, like I said, close to 200 levels, and boy, as the game progresses, there's certain levels, because the levels do repeat themselves, per se. The level names are kind of different, but they do show level 102, 170, so I mean, that's there. But they do kind of repeat themselves, getting a little bit harder, but there's a few select levels in it that are completely devastating, and those are the hardest ones to do. I honestly did not think I was going to beat this game for a while, but I did manage to. The last one is the lovely power-ups that are helpful and destructive. So, throughout the game, there's the bombs, first of all. These bombs annihilate just about the entire screen, which is nice if you've got like 5 billion enemies closing on you. You're just like, boom, boom, bye-bye. And then you have your initial laser, which if you attack or attach it the first time, I believe it just upgrades where you can shoot up and down. I don't remember 2 and 3 fully, but I do remember by the, oh yeah, 2 is just a laser. It goes back to a single, but it's a laser. 3, however, is like 4 beams or 3 beams going it. It's the best. I mean, other than the fact that the enemies that come above you and start coming down can destroy you, if you're good enough, the 3 beam is the weapon that'll completely give you your way of winning along with the bombs. So, let's go ahead and get right into the next one. Here it is. Conker's Bad Fur Day, a game that will live in infamy, at least for most people, as where a lot of people will actually consider this game number 1. I considered it number 2. There's some good reasons behind that, and we will get into that when we hit number 1. The first thing is just very surprising how Conker's Bad Fur Day is done. What I mean by that is that it's done in an animated type style, or a cartoon type style. But that's where it all ends. The game is foul-mouthed, though they did fix that in the rare replay where they kind of bleep out the cuss words. But back in its day for the N64, woo, Nelly! Swear words left and right. It is vulgar. You fight a King Pooh. You are a drunk squirrel. And some of the things in that game is just not right in the head. But parents were like, oh, this game looks cute and fine. And then, well, they watched it. Some of them, and they're like, what the bleep? As they decided to do. So that's the first thing that kind of made it number 2. I mean, I'm not a super huge fan of, like, South Park type humor and stuff like that. I do enjoy it. Not what I expected the first time I touched Conker's Bad Fur Day. Now, I knew about it from N64, but never played it, really, up until now. The second one is how the bosses are unique and how to defeat them. Like I said, there's a King Pooh. There's a haystack that turns out to be a Terminator that you gotta wait around and press the button. You have a fight with a xenomorph. A real-life Xenomorph. I mean, the bosses in this game are just amazing. And defeating them, it's always something a little different, and I mean, I just really like how you fight the bosses. There are not many bosses, but for the bosses there are, it's unique. And the style that they use kind of reminds me of Gex. How Gex could go into the TV and, you know, now I'm the Matrix, now I'm Blade, and so on. Conker kind of goes into this a little bit to himself, and a little bit of fourth wall break. Well, actually, a lot of fourth wall breaking. So I guess actually that and number one does have something in common. I kind of forgot about that up until this moment. Lastly is the different gameplay mechanics throughout the game. So, I mean, at one point, it's a first-person shooter. You've got a first-person shooter. You've got, like, a zombie murderer. Like, they go through a lot of different genres and change the gameplay mechanics up accordingly. And for me, that definitely makes a very fun game. It is hard, though, too. Like, unlike the number one, which I thought is extremely easy, well, easy-ish, Conker's Bad Fur Day is not only great gameplay mechanics, and the bosses are unique, and it's surprising how it's done, but the game can be difficult. There's even a hard mode for a cheat. But I've been talking enough about number two. Let's move on to numero uno and find out what the game was that I thought was the best for Rare Replay and why. Maybe in a little comparison between the two. Let's head into number one. And what exactly is the number one pick for number one? Well, none other than Banjo-Kazooie. Now, although I could have picked Banjo-Tooie or Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts, actually, I take that back. I wouldn't have picked Nuts and Bolts, which we'll get into in another video, I promise. I chose Banjo-Kazooie because I want to say this came out before Conker, and just, it was so great. It's such a great game. I think it's one of the best that Rare did, besides the Donkey Kong Country, but unfortunately that's not on Rare Replay. So, the first reason why Banjo-Kazooie is such a great game, to me, is the great collectibles pace and that it's fun to do. There are a ton and ton and ton of collectibles. But it never really feels old collecting all the puzzle pieces, the notes, the Jinjos. Honestly, everything is done just so perfectly blended together that you don't really mind the fact that you're doing all this collecting. And although I'm not fond of Nuts and Bolts, they do make a crack at the fact of, you know, oh, collectibles, how could we be doing this? So, I mean, it's just great. I mean, a lot of people don't like collectibles in games. I mean, Banjo-Kazooie goes a little overboard with it, but you know what? For its time, it worked. How they did it works. Another one is the game mechanics. They both feel fun, and they feel like the games of old. And by old, I mean like Crash Bandicoot and Spyro. I mean, granted, I believe this was about the time that they had come out, and this does bring up Ukulele. I can't remember the name. But this is one of those games. Crash Bandicoot was such a great game. Banjo-Kazooie, I've got to also agree with that. The game mechanics are fun and unique as well. Like Conker's Bad Fur Day, they do a variety of a few things. Now, it isn't too drastic like Conker or like Banjo-Tooie or even Nuts and Bolts. Both of them really go into new fields. But Banjo-Kazooie, for what it was one of the great games that made the N64 what it is, in my opinion, besides Zelda and Mario. And then finally was the story. The story was fun. It fourth wall broke a lot, it didn't take itself serious, and it had amazing characters. Now, albeit there was no really talking at this point, it was wah, 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 wah. Stuff like that, kind of matching the character. So there was some voice, but the game broke the fourth wall all the time. The characters were just amazing. Banjo was kind of cool and collected, Kazooie was a little, well, troglodyte. I mean, that bird, she made fun of everything, and I am not kidding about everything. Like, she was mean. Gruntilda, I mean, everybody had their quirks and whatnot. Unlike most games where you only like a few characters, I honestly got invested with all these characters. The game didn't take itself too serious. It made fun of itself, not only in fourth wall breaks, but in general with one another. There's a quiz show. I love the quiz show. There's just so much. I cannot wait to play this game for you guys on Rose Play Presents with Saul. Or heck, even play it together with her. So, that is my top 5. So, do you agree with all my picks? Do you think something should have ranked higher, lower? If you want to give me your top 5 Rare Replay games, feel free to down in the comments below. Talk to me. What did you like? What didn't you like? But as for me, I've got to say, this is how it goes. This collection, albeit there are a lot of games, and there are a few bad ones, just these 5 alone make Rare Replay worth it. When it was at $30, you were paying $1 a game. $1 a game for Banjo-Kazooie, Conker's Bad Fur Day, Jetpack Refueled, Battletoads even. 2 different Battletoads. And even Perfect Dark. This is not a bad deal. And as I was playing Banjo-Kazooie, because I did play a little bit of it before back in my childhood, it brought back nostalgic memories. It's nice to see Rare's past. It is a shame sometimes where a lot of people feel Rare is going. I may give my opinion on Rare someday, but I think this is a good place to leave it. So I hope that you guys enjoyed my top 5. I hope that you at least semi-agree with me or can see why I put them where I did. If not, hey, that's cool. Like I said, you have your own, I have my own. Come back next time for Rose Play Season 12, Episode 48, where we will be doing the 4th installment of Achievement Perfectionist on The Walking Dead Season 1 for Telltale. I skipped Tomb Raider because I didn't do the multiplayer achievements. I don't want to do the multiplayer achievements. If you guys want me to do a Rose Play Achievement Perfectionist for it for single player, I can definitely do that. Also let me know down in the comments. Otherwise, until next time, remember, keep gaming, never give up, and if you throw 30 games together, you're bound to find a few gems that are at least good in it. At least I hope so.